Hey, Boos. Welcome to episode 15 of the Young Monarchs podcast. Thank you to everybody listening on all the streaming platforms and to everyone now watching on our YouTube channel. I'm super excited about this episode because up until now, all of our guests have been women that I've met out or known through school or different things that I've done on my own. But now I've been recently reaching out to a lot of more influencers and just women that I either follow on YouTube or Instagram or anything like that. And as always, when you're sharing something that's like so near and dear to you, you're kind of nervous of how people will perceive it and if they'll want to be a part of it. But I'm super excited because everybody that I've been talking to and reaching out to are more than happy to be on the podcast. So I'm super excited about that. We're going to have tons of more guest episodes on the way. So be sure to check those out. I am ready to start getting back outside and having people come over because we normally record the podcast on my balcony. So if you're watching on YouTube, stay tuned because those videos will be a lot cuter than our Zoom interviews currently. I'm super excited about today's guest. Her name is Erin, and she's a digital creator that was born and raised in the DMV area. She currently resides in the DMV. I'm super excited about our guest today. Her name is Erin, and she's a content creator that was born and raised in the DMV area. She currently resides in New York City, and she began creating content in 2016 to bring awareness to mental health and promote positive self-talk in the community around her. Simultaneously, at the same time she started creating more content, she was also on her hair journey, which is one of her claims to fame and how actually I think it's how I found her from her hair, but this is one of the many things that she does on her page and one of the many things that is a part of her journey. And I'm really excited to talk to her, fellow Pisces, and we're gonna have a great conversation. So hey Erin, how are you doing today?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. I was already kind of telling everybody a little bit about what you do, but I completely forgot. I didn't even like intro what we're talking about today. We're kind of going to cover something that's like near and dear to you with like talking about mental health. We're going to talk about how to find your voice today and pretty much like how to learn more about ourselves and get out of our own way to like make all these great things happen that we're doing.
Yeah, that sounds
If you
great.
wanted to kind of give people a little bit more of a download on like what you do, how you created your brand and where you are.
Yeah, so well, like she said, my name is Erin. I run my account on Instagram. It's called TheEsperanzaMaria. I have a blog called The Sunflower Experience, and I started back in 2016, just doing blogging. And I really started as like I wanted to have kind of an outlet to put all of my pictures on, and then also have something to like express myself with my writing. So I kind of brought those all together and started my blog, The Sunflower Experience. And I've been creating content since then. It kind of escalated when I really started to get into my natural hair journey, and a lot of people were coming to me for natural hair advice. So that's what really kind of made my page take off and kind of got me into the influencer space. I definitely really love content creating. And just being in this space, I tried to advocate for mental health. I try to make sure that like everything that I'm posting is being real, but doing my best to stay positive. And yeah, just trying to be a voice, and use my platform to do the right thing.
Yeah, and I think that's how I found your page. I think just by looking at like hair pictures, obviously, and then from
Yeah.
you, I was kind of seeing like all your posts and like during certain times I would be just like going through my Instagram story and things would pop up and I'm just like, wow, I needed that message right now. And it would always be like from your page. So I was really excited about this episode. But I kind
Yeah.
of go ahead and talk about like I know mental health looks different for different people, and then it comes in like different ways for everybody. But what does mental health mean to you, and what does that look like for you? Like, what are your most important things, or where do you try to convey as like when people are saying like, what do I do with my mental health? Like, here's some like 3 things that you can do.
Okay, yeah. So I think the first thing that I want to say is I personally deal with debilitating depression and anxiety. So I've been dealing with it for, I want to say, since I was around 10 or 11. I haven't been like clinically diagnosed, but just a lot of the things that I've gone through and traumas that I've endured have brought me to where I am today. So good mental health for me kind of just looks like doing what makes me happy. So my schedule is not very it's not a routine based schedule. Before, of course, all of this was happening, it was a mixture of going to events and doing content creation and having meetings and all different types of things. So it kind of is all over the place. But for me, three things that kind of keep me on track is being able to connect with individuals, talk to my friends, engage with people. So this is why like this
Yeah.
period in time is like really hard for me because I really thrive in personal connections with people. So that really helps keep my mental health. Writing is another way that I stay in good mental health. It kind of just helps me get all of my thoughts out onto a piece of paper and like look at them and see them versus letting them all fester in my head. And then also just like taking time like every single day to like have a moment to myself to be like, how are you feeling today? So those are three things that I really make sure that I do. And if I am having a bad day or I am having a bad mental health day, I recognize it and do my best to just kind of live through it, like not force myself to be happy, because if I try to force myself to be happy, or if someone else tries to force happiness on me, I'm like, it kind of just forces me even more into a space that I don't really want to be in. But yeah, so those are kind of the things that work for me.
It's interesting
I really like, go ahead. No, go ahead.
that you said like you notice like in yourself that you're anxious and sometimes you become depressed, because for me I never really understood mental health like going through high school. It was kind of like, oh, this is how like some shitty thing will happen in high school, and it's like, okay, so this just sucks, we're just going to keep on moving and there's nothing that we can do about it, just like forget about it and keep going. And
Yeah.
when I got in college, I realized I didn't even know I don't feel like I got the anxiety that I now I'm like working through until I was in a very bad relationship in college. And it just made me so anxious to like ending that relationship. From that point, I've realized like I get so like heightened up sometimes to where I just have to breathe and like relax and just like see everything that's going on around me. But it's so
A big thing also that people don't realize is when you're like going through an anxiety attack or like you're having a moment of anxiety, like your body like clenches, like it, the tension in your body just like really, for me it's like all in my neck and my back kind of area, so I like just go like this when I'm super anxious. So like having a moment to really like sit up, put your shoulders back and like stretch out your lungs and stuff can really just, that's literally all you need is a moment to like release yourself from whatever moment of anxiety that you're having, and you know, doing that as many times as you need if you're having an attack or if you're just like having a really like kind of up and down kind of day.
yeah. And for me, it's like I'll realize even if I'm just like working or talking to friends, if I get anxious, I cannot breathe. Like
Yeah, it's weird.
I'll have times at work where I might be like working on a tons of things and people are asking me for stuff. And I'll literally have to like walk out of the building and be like, I cannot breathe.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's interesting just like for me, like just being aware of like when I'm getting anxious and when I need to kind of take a break to myself. But it's
Yeah.
like everybody experiences that in some way. Like at my job I have now, I have to talk to people. With
Hmm.
outside of this podcast and this YouTube channel, I do not talk at all. Like my family will tell you I do not speak. I've not said anything at a family function since I was little. But it's like makes me anxious, but at the same time it's like the people that I do know and I'm really close to, like they see this. So like this is helping me get out of my comfort zone while also like talking to so many other women who are going through the exact same type of things. and like
Yeah, absolutely.
those anxieties, like you with your page. I don't know, like social media is so anxious sometimes, just like creating posts and things, like
Yeah.
everything that goes into like this curl isn't right, so this picture has to come down, or I don't like this picture next to this picture. So it's like
Yeah.
many things that come into it to where people can just be like, okay, 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 but then they still put themselves out there.
Yeah.
Like that's a beautiful thing. So it's
Yeah. Social media can definitely be anxiety inducing. I experience that on a regular basis. So it's challenging, but it's good to put yourself out there if you want to. And that just goes kind of like for anything in life. If you are feeling like, like you want to start a new venture or start a new project, like don't let anxiety and self-doubt kind of take you out and take you away from essentially your purpose, because if you got to the space where you have the idea, it's a part of your purpose, like something in is a part of your purpose. So yeah.
like with what you're doing on a daily basis. I don't know, we don't have to go into detail of like what you have planned and like everything that you have going this year, but what are, I know for me, when I'm putting something out there or just trying something new,
Hmm.
kind of have to now give myself a pep talk, because like so long in my life I've looked for other people to kind of give me that pep talk and say like, hey, you should definitely do this or you should definitely do that.
Yeah.
How do you like talk your way through those like super anxious moments? So I know
Yeah.
I'm just like a close your eyes type of girl. Like we're just gonna be really scary about this right now, but we're just gonna press send and like
Hmm.
happens type of thing.
Yeah. So for me, okay, so where is it? This tattoo, I got this on the day when I had like the worst anxiety attack of my life. I had just stayed up for like 3 days straight study for exams, and like I had taken Adderall. Don't do drugs, kids. But I had taken Adderall, um, and I had a really, really, really bad crash. It was literally the worst one I've ever had. So from that moment, I always, the word on my wrist is fuerza, and it's strength in Spanish. And I always told myself from that moment I would never allow outside factors or other things to take me so far out of myself to the point that I couldn't calm myself down. So that's kind of like the mentality that I go into things that are anxiety inducing with. A lot of things that like go with social media, there's a lot of pressure to like, you know, make sure the post is perfect and make sure that the aesthetic is good, and then it goes with the flow of the page. So that's kind of what I focus on. But for me, like a big thing to alleviate that stress is just having backed up content. I always make sure that I have like content stacked up so that I can figure it out and like figure out where it's going to go on my feed, so it kind of reduces that anxiety. I think for me, captions are more anxiety inducing because it's like trying to figure out the visuals I have down, like I can figure that out. The aesthetics I got down, I can figure that out. But like the captions for me, because writing is like what I love to do, but I always go back and forth in my head. I'm like, okay, do I want to go, like I don't want to go too deep and like lose people, and I don't want to be too shallow. And like the whole reason that I started my platform was to be able to share part of myself and my experiences. And if I'm just putting like an emoji as my caption, what am I doing and how am I bringing something to the table for my audience to consume? Like if I'm just posting pretty pictures of myself, what is that doing for anybody? So providing some kind of comfort and making sure that when I am posting or when I am doing anything that's anxiety inducing, I'm somewhat prepared, but I try not to put too much pressure on myself. Like I'm a very go with the flow kind of person. So I just try to just pep talk myself, like you said, but also remember that I don't want to get to a place where anxiety is like taking me out of myself. So that's like that was a moment for me. It's a very specific moment that like is the source of why I won't let my anxiety take me outside of myself again. But I think just daily practices is again just like repeating to yourself like, why am I doing this? What's my mission? Why do I want to, whatever it is, it doesn't matter, if it's social media or if it's a conversation that you need to have with someone, or if it's a new job, or if it's whatever, like take a moment and be like, why am I doing this? What's my why? and that kind of like, once you figure out your why, it should alleviate some of the stress and anxiety that you have surrounding whatever that subject is.
Yeah. And I know for like me personally, I'm like looking for my specific why, but because I'm like a person that's I'm so like specific. Like I can't do metaphors. Like I need you to say how you feel, say what you mean. So
Yeah.
me, I see so many things in my head of different things I can be doing in my future. All of it, I'm just like, well, why and then what? Like,
Mm-hmm.
why do I see these crazy things that I'm like, I'm not doing that, Lord, but you put that in my head, but I don't know about that one.
Right.
Like, from what you said about writing, I just started journaling at the beginning of this year. And I have noticed just how much is not like constantly bogged down in my head from journaling. But more importantly, I've learned a lot about myself just from like skimming back and seeing like in January, what did I talk about? In February, what did I talk about? And what are like things that have continued to go like month through month that I need to address to kind of like move through and get over. So from journaling and then just putting myself out there more, I'm learning so much more about myself. And it's just like what you said about the like having that moment to yourself every day. I'm having like that moment to where before I never wanted to be like alone. I was like with my friends or with a sibling or something.
Mm-hmm.
And forcing myself to be like, if everybody on this planet just disappears one day and it's just you, are you going to be okay? And like, are you going to be good with talking to yourself, hanging out with yourself, doing stuff by yourself? And journaling has helped me learn so much more about myself. Doing this podcast and just talking to like different women, I'm realizing like strengths that I never even knew I had, or things that I can work on and I never even knew I had. So it's kind of like putting myself out there is one of like the main things that's helped me learn more about myself and kind of just be on this journey of discovering like what I'm supposed to do. I feel like my step one was like learning who I am, and then we'll learn what we're supposed to do exactly.
Right. Exactly. That's awesome. Good for you. I'm glad that like your self-discovery has taken you here and your journey has kind of brought you to the space.
Yeah, I'm loving like this whole podcast is really fun to do, but like getting out of my head for real to say like I'm trying to figure out on a daily basis like how do you get your creative juices pumping? Like how do you get out of your head and saying like there's a billion topics like this, but what makes your topic different? Like when you're creating things, how do you like get out of your head and kind of get into like a clear space to where you're just kind of letting things come to you and just having that like calm time, that process?
So for me, like I create so freely on a regular basis. Unless I'm doing like some sort of sponsored content, whether it's writing or whether it's, like doing photo shoots and stuff, or video production. I try to keep it as free flowing as possible. And I think I'm not like a type A kind of person. Like I am not good with, like I said, routine or lists or like having things like structurally perfect. So when I'm creating content, it's kind of like I follow that same go with the flow kind of attitude. I don't really put too much pressure on myself to make it perfect. I kind of let it flow and have either a space or an idea, and build from there. So I think when it comes to letting go of self-doubt when creating content, it's like, one, making sure that whatever your idea is, that you're not copying off of someone, or you're not stealing somebody else's like stuff, or just making sure that it's authentic and original. And even if somebody has talked about the same things, for example, on a podcast that you're talking about, they might have not hit on every single subject that you did, or they might have had someone who had a completely different perspective about mental health, or just about any subject. So I think the main thing for me is just not putting so much pressure on myself to like create. When I'm creating content for my feed, I kind of just go based off of like what's around me. Like, do I have a photographer that day? Do I have to take pictures of myself? What kind of vibe do I want to give? So just kind of like thinking those things out, but again, like not putting too much pressure on myself. And for me, that helps with reducing my anxiety, because if I put too much pressure on myself to like get the perfect shot and I don't get it, then I'm going to beat myself up and like go into this like never ending cycle of like, why am I doing this? So to avoid that, I really just focus on myself. I draw inspiration from like Pinterest and other content creators, but always try to make sure that whatever I'm putting out is my own and it's something that I love. And again, like I preach and preach that like it doesn't have to be perfect for it to be good, and our versions of perfect for ourselves are so much higher than what like other people, when from the outside looking in, they see. So yeah, I think just stepping away from your work and like looking at it from a broad perspective and being like, okay, cool, so like what am I doing, why do I want to do it, and then like how am I going to put all this together. And also just having a myriad of ideas, like constantly, whenever something comes into your head, write it down, put it in your notes, write it down on a piece of paper, put it somewhere where you can go back to it and refer back to it when you're drawing a blank, so that when the time comes to create said content, you're like, okay, cool, so like maybe that idea didn't work out, but like maybe I can go and run with this idea.
Yeah. I know when we were talking earlier this week, you talked about how through your content, like being a voice and also like kind of giving a voice to other people is something that's really important to you. Can you like explain that to me? Where I know how like we find our individual voices, but how have you helped people find their own voice and kind of give them
Mhm.
power?
That's awesome. It's a great question. So for me, I think just like sharing my experiences and telling my story is something that a lot of people connect with, because it's that sense when um, I'm going through something, I try to, I'm not a super private person. I'm open, but I also like am mindful about, trying not to share too much on social media, just because like it is very sensitive. If I am going through something, and sometimes people are insensitive on social media. Um, so I think like to encourage people to have a voice and like give a voice to other people, giving a voice to other people and like other women. Um, I try to stand up for um, like what's the word that I'm looking for? I try to stand up for things that I believe in and like causes that I believe in. So I use my platform to spread the word about things, or to kind of like pass the mic. If I see something that's super inspiring, I try to repost it and make sure that more people are getting exposed to it. If there's a movement going on, pushing that forward. And as a person of color, I definitely like 100% have privilege in my community. So I try to use my voice with the privilege that I have and spread the word that needs to be spread. If they're not going to listen to someone who maybe has less followers or doesn't have as much clout, which people clout chasing these days is crazy. But anyway, so I try to give a voice to other people in that sense, and then just encouraging people to realize their own journey and realize their path through my own experiences, to let people know that like I have a lot of followers, but like I still go through shit, and like I still have a traumatic past that I deal with on a regular basis, and I have to kind of navigate as an adult now, and figure out how everything fits into my adulthood.
Yeah, it's it's interesting because like to what you're saying, my whole idea around like the podcast was I'm big on women being able to like own their power and being able
Mm-hmm.
to like use that power to not only elevate themselves in their life, but elevate like young women and other people around them. So like having a platform to where you can just lift women up by asking them to be on your podcast and then them sharing their message with so many other people that are going through the same things, or maybe like we're not in the same industry, like we're going after completely different things, but we all experience like mental health, and we all need to like take care of ourselves and know that we are important. So like I personally put like a lot of value in women being able to like stand strong and like really, like once you find what you want or just know what you want in like different aspects of life, I encourage people to like really stand for that. Like don't take any shit, don't take less than like the no, less than the answer that you know, the answer or the outcome that you want. So it's so amazing, like just women who are doing different things and saying like, I want my relationship to be like this, and I want my friendships to be like this, and I want my, you know, life structure to be like this, my job to be like this. It's like we're in a space now to where women are just, in my, I use the word like taking over, but women are just not like, I feel like we've always realized the power that we have as women, but really like not being afraid to like shine that light, because
Mm-hmm.
we feel like that light may overpower a man or someone else around us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think also a really big thing to address is like, within womanhood is there's so much stigma and so much I guess curation of competition. So I think a big thing for me also is like straying away from those stereotypes and those stigmas about women,
Mhm.
um, and really indulging in media and people who, like obviously, like some of those feelings that people feel, whether it's envy or jealousy or whatever they feel, um, can be validated. It's facing those feelings and combating them with like, why am I feeling this way, or what insecurities inside of me are making me feel like I have to project jealousy or envy onto someone who's done absolutely nothing to me. So like that's also a really big thing to keep in mind, is like we're in a space where there's so much room for everyone to win. So like setting ourselves up as women to do no harm and take no shit is something that collectively, we should definitely be doing as a unit. Um, and I definitely try to keep that unity front on my page, and make sure that I'm supporting women in the best way that I know how.
Definitely. And even to your point, I feel like also it's important for like, I was born and raised in like the South. So there's like this stigma around telling little girls that they should be polite and that they should be quiet and that they should be seen and not heard, and that
Mm-hmm.
be covered and act this way and do this. That for me has been the the hardest chains to break off of me, because I said I was always quiet, so I was always listening, like always doing what I was supposed to do. So now
Mm-hmm.
like I'm 27 and I don't want to be quiet, you know, like I don't want to be seen and not heard. Like I want to be like not boastful or like it's like on the scene, but like when I say something, I want you to listen to me and take me seriously, because I'm not gonna just speak for no reason.
And that's a whole nother like realm of mental health, is generational kind of pressures that are placed on us as women. I've seen it so many times, like my grandmother and my mom don't have the best relationship, and like in turn seeing their dynamic and realizing how my own mother, like, and my relationship is not that great either. And it's like, what did my grandmother say or do to my mom to like not
Yeah.
make her want to be close to her? And it's like those things, like be quiet. What happens in this house stays in this house. You know, you're a child. I'm the adult. You need to be quiet. What I say is law. Even if I'm wrong, I'm right. Like all these things that like we're told as children and as women specifically, it's like, I'm 7. Why are you like, you know, putting all these pressures on me? And then, you know, growing up, the generational just like dehumanization of women across the board and like objectification of women across the board and women doing it to themselves.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like that's something that I could never deal with and live with. I was always very loud and like not loud in like the oh my god I'm so loud, but like just like very vocal about how I was feeling and like vocal about defending myself when I didn't feel like I did anything wrong, or even if I did do something wrong, like just, you know, voicing where I was coming from. And it was always shut down. It was always shut down. It was always like, be quiet. I don't want to hear you talk. You're in trouble. Like all these things that have like put a damper on like my mom and my relationship, and probably, you know, put a damper on her and my grandmother's relationship. So those kinds of things, they really affect your mental health. Like it's something that when you're, for me, I lived under my parents' roof for 18 years. And it's, I feel like the justification that I keep trying to tell myself is like, don't be so hard on yourself about removing those ideals from your head, because as long as it takes to put them in, sometimes it takes just as long to get them out and to unlearn those things.
Yeah, I feel like I say the same thing to myself. I feel like I was raised very on like religious beliefs, and this is how you should live X, Y, and Z to the T. Like no boundaries outside of that. And I've had a hard time with just being myself really to the world, because I never felt like I could be myself. I guess that's why I'm quiet around family. I was always nervous about, well, what if I said what was on my mind right now? Like,
Yeah.
because when I notice sometimes when I do that around like close friends, and when I just say what's on my mind, like I can come off like as an intentional bitch, or like I can just say like asshole comments, but they're not. I don't mean like anything bad by them. It's just like,
That's just like what you're thinking at the moment. I completely understand that. I'm the same way. And sometimes, you know, like it's the way you say things that can be a bit tone deaf to either the situation. And I know that about myself. Like that's definitely something that I have been working on, is how I would say things to people. Because, you know, it can be something as small as just like joking and you say it the wrong way. And it's like people are like,
that is
oh my,
more.
you know, like excuse me, I need to grab my water.
You're good.
But yeah, like people can really take it the wrong way, and then you kind of feel the need to explain yourself, and be like, no, like I didn't mean it like that, or it kind of just like shifts the mood completely, and there's just no like
I had to explain myself. I haven't had to explain myself. I always felt a need to explain myself because of that, like raising and always wanting people to like be pleased with you.
mm-hmm.
I kind of noticed like throughout my college experience and like a situation that happened with all my friends, thinking back on it now, it's like I really wish I would have just said what was on my mind the day one. Like I would have skipped all of this and just kind of like went about things in my own way and kind of went to the beat of my own drum. And
Mm-hmm.
one of the biggest things that I hope to give to younger women that pay attention to me, or like my daughters one day, I want them to like feel empowered in every single way, shape, and form to be,
Absolutely.
no, I don't want to date you, or this is what I feel about this subject, or just to like, I want a daughter who wants to like go march in the streets for women's rights, like whatever my kids want to do is that type of support that I want to give no matter what. It's like I don't want to put limitations on anybody, especially like women in our time, but like I do not want those limitations on us as individuals anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a big thing, like just I randomly listen to parenting podcasts, not because I want to be a mom anytime soon, but to kind of get a better understanding of where my emotional trauma comes from, and like understand kind of a way to navigate, this in adulthood, but also figure out where like my parents were coming from when they were saying or doing these things. And I just realized, like, people are only human. We're all only human. So like, we can't put a standard on someone else to be like, this was wrong and you can't do that, or because they were either doing what they thought was right or were acting on some form of trauma themselves. So yeah, just like really making sure that when thinking about these things and these topics, and like taking mental health into account for everyone, because across the board, somebody else's anxiety could be terrible, and the way that they react to something, is because of their mental health, and then we take it away and it affects our mental health. So I think that's something that a lot of people kind of negate from their minds, because they're just like, this interaction is what it is. It's this interaction, and they take it for face value versus like looking into the depth of everything. So
like a book I read is like my favorite book ever. It's called Motivation Manifesto. And it like opened my eyes to just like not what life should be, but how you should approach it. And just knowing like no matter what situations are happening, I see things one way, you'll see things your own way. And depending on how my day was or what my life was like, can completely change like your thinking of how X, Y, and Z will go.
absolutely.
And me realizing like things happen that could be bad for me, but it's like kind of innocent on the other person's part to a certain extent. I kind of think about things now because it's all of what they feel and how they are viewing the situation. So I think that's something that's made me super compassionate in situations that make me frustrated. It's just they're coming from their own good place.
Compassion and empathy is just like something that is underrated, I feel like, especially with millennials and just young people, because a lot of people are insensitive or take things like as a joke when it's really not funny. Like, and I'm a very sensitive person, so like there's a lot of things that I really don't find funny. And I try not to take it personally, but it's like, as an empath, I don't understand how you could be so fucking inconsiderate and insensitive. Like, what?
Yeah, like they live their own life, and that's like, I feel you completely on like feeling other people's pain, even if like you don't relate. Like it's heavy, even if people could just be more conscious and aware of that simple fact. Sorry, but I'm interrupting this amazing conversation with Erin to go ahead and do the Get Your Head in the Game segment. This week's Get Your Head in the Game is from David Cho, CEO and founder of The Future, which is an educational online platform that teaches design to creatives. I loved, love, love what he has to say in this segment because he talks about the true path to self-confidence.
So this mirror mask is something we all carry around, and it takes a lot of effort to hold on to. And what we realize is the world already sees you exactly for who you are. So there's this whole thing, right? We're just trying to hold this thing up, this image, this thing that consumes a lot of our energy. And it wasn't until I figured this thing out that everybody already sees you for exactly who you are, and they can choose to accept you or reject you. And there's really not a lot that you can do. It could be an in-law, it could be the love interest of your life that just can't pay you any attention. And we just have to be okay with that. And I'll give you a story and I'll make it really personal. As I was doing YouTube videos, I was very reluctant to do them. I was dragged into it, believe it or not. Now we're 500 videos later, but the first 10 were not so easy for me. And my friend, Jose Caballer, who some of you guys know, he's an extrovert. He calls himself obnoxious, and he is the most extroverted person I know. He could literally walk into a room full of strangers and eat the food off your plate, not even ask you if that's okay. That's my friend Jose. So he said, Chris, let's make videos together. I don't know what to say. He's like, you don't have to do anything. I don't want to be on camera. Don't worry, you just stand there. So for the first 3 episodes, I sat in the chair next to him. My jaw was clenched tight. And I was like, what words do I say? Because I was thinking, I don't want to say the wrong things. I have clients that I don't want to set off. What do I review? What do I do? Like, I don't know what I'm doing here. And I'd go home every night and my jaw was sore from the next day. I'm like, I couldn't figure it out because I was clenched so tight. And the team is editing the videos. And the few parts that I did say, I just hated the sound of my own voice. You guys know that feeling? You ever heard yourself? Like, nobody sounds worse than you. It's kind of weird. And I was such a freak about it because I'd walk around the office and if it was playing on somebody's computer, naturally they're getting paid to edit the video, I'd hear them like, shut it down, turn it off. Every time you see me, and I made it a law, like every time you see me walk by, within 8 feet, I need you to stop editing, because I can't handle it, right? And I was just thinking about that thought. It's like, what is wrong with me? And the thought I had was, I thought I sounded cooler than that. I thought I looked better than that. And I would ask my wife, like, do I look like that? She'd say, yeah. Do I sound like that? Yeah. I don't trust you. Boys, come around. Dad needs to ask you a really important question. I need to play this video for you. Tell me the truth. The kids will never lie to you. Do I sound like that? Like, yep. And went back to playing video games. So I had to kind of wrestle with that and just reconcile that I do sound terrible, but I already sound terrible to everybody and they're still okay with that. And so this is kind of me going on my path of accepting myself fully and 100%. And this is where you really get self-confidence. So this is the thing, if we can just turn this energy away and forget that there's a mask here, because there really isn't, people already see you and either have made the decision to accept you or not to accept you. And there's nothing you can do about it. So ditch the mirror mask.
For our Get Your Life segment, we pretty much share like one thing in our journey that's going well with our topic and then one thing that we're still struggling with. So for me, one thing that's been making my mental health journey a lot better has been like those moments in the morning. I absolutely love my patio. It's the favorite thing about my house, but I'll like go out there in the morning and I'll just like pray and read my Bible a little bit, but just like have a moment to myself to kind of, on my patio, I can see nothing but like a tree of like a forest and tons of flowers. So it like puts things into a good perspective for me when I'm like up and down emotionally or just anxious, because it's like God created this entire beautiful forest behind my house. So like no matter what bigger small things like I'm going through, like I'm gonna be fine and get through it, because like all of this amazing things that God's created that just came from dirt or came from nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And then one thing that I'm still struggling with as a part of my journey would be not getting caught up in like the small stuff and just really understanding. With being a millennial, we grew up with computers and phones and social media and all these types of aspects, but I'm still somewhat struggling with knowing like this is not real, or this doesn't matter to like real genuine happiness in life. So one thing I am still struggling and working through is like just letting those small things go and knowing like what are the things that actually will matter when I'm 80, 90 years old, and what are the things that I would just be like, I shouldn't have harped on this or that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think what I have down, or what I kind of have mastered, or that I'm like doing well at, is just analyzing and processing. Sorry, this light is just really harsh.
You're good.
Like analyzing and processing my thoughts, and figuring out kind of like where I am in my journey. I think I've worked really hard at being super aware, self-aware, and super conscious of my surroundings, myself, where I am, the space I'm in. But something I'm still struggling with is I will like come to a realization and an understanding of myself, and acting on it is kind of the part where I'm like, okay, I realize the problem, I see that it's here, so now what? And so I'm still struggling with like really putting in practices in my daily life that correct or that combat the parts of me that I'm not super proud of.
Mm-hmm.
And figuring out, once I've kind of have located the issue or located the problem, doing something about it and facing it head on versus kind of like procrastinating and just like not thinking about it or pushing it to the side.
Yeah. I know, like, I am waiting for the day to where I can afford like a therapist to go to every single week. But I struggle still with like, to your point of just like knowing, like, yeah, it's good that we're self-aware, but like knowing what are like the little steps to do to let this go or remove this from our lives, or like get rid of this wall that we're putting up, is
Right.
like the hardest thing for me, without having, I've never been like a big sharer, even with like super close personal friends, just
Mm-hmm.
because I've had like those past traumas, like with friendships not working out.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm always finding like, how do I work through this thing when I'm like not sharing it with anybody else, but like me and maybe like one or two other people super close to me, is
Mm-hmm.
something that I'm still ready for the day to just go visit somebody.
Mm-hmm.
But so now it's time to get into like the motivational tea that we do at the end of every episode. And I know you mentioned that you may have a story, a positive message, or just a story where you did something out of your comfort zone and it like really worked out well for you and kind of paved the way for you doing more.
Yeah. So for me, like moving to New York was a 10-year-old dream of mine. I have wanted to move to New York and work in the media space for a really, really long time. I used to read all different types of magazines, Cosmo Girl, 17, like
Yes.
everything, Teen Vogue, every single magazine. And I always wanted to be a beauty editor or a writer or some type of freelance, something for a media outlet. And I put myself in a box sometimes and left myself there. So when influencing came, kind of like fell in my lap the way that it did, it kind of created this perfect avenue to be able to fulfill my dreams. So last July, I got fired from my job because I was working as a server and bartender, and I got fired because my boss was being just like really I don't like, I'm not a huge fan of like white men. Let's just
Yeah.
put a little bowl right there. White men, they're not my favorite people in the world. Um, and he was just being very misogynistic and
Yeah.
just like kind of pressure his power. And like, he was a server before, and like I told him straight up, like, just because you're a manager now doesn't mean that you can talk to me in any kind of way or treat me any kind of way, and I'm not going to treat you any differently from when you were a server. So
Yeah.
the moment came when he tried to put his foot down in a way that he thought he could, and I didn't allow it, and I got fired because of it. So I was in a bit of a like pickle, because I was like, okay, like I didn't want to work there anyways. I hated that job. I really did want to be done with it, but influencing hadn't gotten to the point where it could fully support me. So I was kind of like, what am I going to do? So my friend, I had been a nanny for a long time. So one of my friends, her god sister needed someone to watch her children. So I did that for a month, and simultaneously in the midst of all this happening, my cousin had reached out and said that she wanted to move to New York. And I was like, I don't know how I'm going to be able to do that, or like what is going to fall into place. But it's so crazy because everything, as soon as I made the decision to go, everything aligned like perfectly. I made the
Yeah.
decision to go in like June, got fired from my job in July, like found another job for the month of August to kind of like finish me out, because I planned on moving in September to kind of finish out living in the DMV. And then I decided to do some freelance work for some brands in addition to the work that I was doing for myself. So at this point I was like fully like full-time freelancer working from home, and it all just aligned so crazily. So
That's nice.
York and have been living and working for myself ever since. And I am beyond blessed. I don't even know where to begin to like start and say thank you to the universe, to God, to whoever's looking out for me. So that's definitely a success story that I will live
Yeah.
on for the rest of my life. And I hope that this success story only continues to bring me success in the future.
Yeah. I like how you said, like, when you made the decision to go, everything started like falling in line perfectly for you. Because
Yeah.
like we were talking about earlier in the week, I want to go to LA and live there so bad. And I've talked about it on a lot of episodes of just me processing that process of going somewhere where I know no one, like have no family there, but just feeling like when the time I went to California, I kind of like felt in my soul, like this is where I'm supposed to be and this is where I'm supposed to thrive. And I'm like at the beginning of that decision-making process to like, what can my life look like in LA?
Right.
So it's like a beautiful thing. But I want to thank you so much for taking your time out today to like be on the episode, because I feel like I love all the episodes that we've done, but this is the one that's been like most like real and in depth on like a serious like topic. So I'm really excited that you joined me for this one. But I just wanted to give you an opportunity to like tell people how they can stay in contact with you. Anything you have going on in New York this summer or later in the fall that you want to talk about. But just, yeah.
Yeah, so please feel free to follow me on Instagram. It's TheEsperanzaMaria, and that I'm not gonna spell it because it's kind of long. But it's the and then ESP. Just type
It'll
that in.
be in like all the social posts and everything so they can get to you.
And then on Twitter, it's Esperanza Maria and then underscore at the end of it. So that's Instagram and Twitter. I have a couple of things in the works. I can't talk about them right now, unfortunately, but just stay tuned to my page. And yeah, I'll be making announcements, hopefully, with all this stuff ending in the
Yes.
new year. And I'll be able to make those announcements and share with you guys what I'm working on.
Yes. And I thank you so much yet again. I said at the beginning of this episode, I was really nervous about like reaching out to people that I didn't like personally know, but
Mm-hmm.
you're one of like the many people who have like reached back out to me and wanted to be on the podcast. So I'm super excited just about this whole mission and everything, like of just empowering women and just spending the rest of our lives doing exactly what we want and really like owning everything that we're stepping into. So
100%.
I'm super excited for everything that's to come. If you're watching on YouTube, you can subscribe and like our channel, browse around to see some other things that we have going on. This episode, just like every other episode and YouTube videos, every Monday will be live on all podcast platforms and YouTube. But thank you guys so much for tuning in to this episode. Thank you, Erin, for being here. Make sure you guys check out her page, follow her. If like beauty, fashion, hair, inspiration, like if you ever need like that pep talk, like it's the page to go to if you're just having a moment. But thank you guys so much. And thank you, Erin, too, for
Thank
being on
you.
today's episode.
Yes, thank you so much. You guys have a great rest of your day.
See ya.